So today we are learning to use models to multiply a decimal by a decimal. And something that we're going to just need to remember for this problem before we get started is that area equals length times width, or height times width. It's important to think a little bit about what kind of patterns you see with your answers and how you might be able to solve these problems without modeling them. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to look at this word problem. So the width of a stamp is 5/10 inches and the height of a stamp is 7/10 inches. What is the area? For me, it's really helpful to think about these kinds of problems as area because the visual helps me understand why the answer is what it is. So I'm going to show you using this grid right here and these 10 rods what the area is of the stamp. So first, the width of the stamp is 5/10 inches. So I'm going to start by doing this. Start pulling these over. So we're thinking the width, which I'm thinking about width this way. So I want to fill in 5/10 inches going that way. Okay. Then we have to look and think, okay, so that's my width. If I look right up here, my width is 5/10 inches. It's the width of something. Now I'm going to think about my height. So the height of it is 7/10 inches. So I'm going to go here because height, up and down, or length. So that's 1, 2. Okay. So what you might start to notice is where the tens rods kind of overlap. But now you notice where they're overlapping in the middle here. That right there is your area, or it is your stamp. And now you just have to figure out how many of the boxes in this grid do the rods overlap for your answer. So I would just probably count it like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and just multiply. That's 35. So 35 hundredths, right? Because it's out of hundredths. So that would actually be my answer. So let me just get my marker here. Okay. And then I'm going to come over here because I noticed that 35 of the squares, they overlap. 35 out of 100, which as a decimal looks like this. And also take into account this number 7 and 5, and when I actually counted them up here, I really multiplied those numbers and then realized it was hundredths. Okay, so let's look at another one. I have 2 and 1/10 times 1/10. And what I'm really, another way to kind of think about this is that I already set up 2 and 1/10 down here. And I'm trying to basically figure out what 1/10 of it is. So I want to cover up a tenth of what I've already set up. And I'll show you how to do that with these manipulatives. So I'm going to move over these tens rods and start to cover up 1/10 of what I already have here. So this is a tenth of this grid. I'm going to get a tenth of this grid. And I could use the little one to just do a tenth of that, or I could just finish out with this rod and just because I only need to really zoom in on the parts that are covered by both the rods that are going this way and the rods that are going this way. So the rods that are going vertically and horizontally, where they overlap. And again, remembering that the overlap is my answer. So I'm looking here and I'm noticing I can count them individually, but I also know what my width is of this, or how many rods are going across. My answer is 21, but 21 what? So now let me get this. Let me change my pen. 21, what are these little cubes, or I'm sorry, these little squares? Each one is equal to a hundredth. So if I have 21 squares, little squares, it would be 21 hundredths. And that would be my answer. Look at these numbers and kind of in your mind, I think it could be helpful for you to think a little bit about a way that you can do this without using the model, because that's where we're going to next, and I think it could just be helpful. If you want to stay and we can do one more together, you're welcome to. But if you're feeling done and ready to try your independent practice, please feel free to give it a try. Okay, so if you're staying, we'll try one more together. So I think what we'll do is let's just do number 6 in the independent practice. I'm going to move this over. To clone these quickly. So number 6 is 3/10 times 7/10. If I were you, I'd pause this video and just give this one a try before we do it together. So I'm going to start thinking about this one. I'm going to start thinking of 3/10. I'm going to set up my 3/10 going this way. So 3/10 would be my height if we're thinking about area, or my length. So I'm doing 3/10 of this hundredths grid. Now I need to do 7/10 going the other way. Now I look at this and I try to figure out, okay, so how many blocks, or how many of these squares have both sets, or where do they overlap? So you can do a couple things. I could just go 3 times 7, 21, and I know that each one of these squares is 100th, so my answer would simply be 21 hundredths. When I look at this, I think a little bit. You can go through and count each individual one just to double check if you want to make sure you're right. But that's our answer. So you can move on now and try to start working on the independent practice.